We just saw how ISIS forces have been persecuting Christians, causing a new wave of refugees into Jordan and elsewhere. Sadly, the violence only seems to be growing, with ISIS on the march. We also saw that many of these Christians hope for sanctuary in America. But is their hope misplaced? One man taking up their cause is Mark Arabo, an Iraqi-American businessman in San Diego, California.
There is a full-blown Christian genocide, a Christian Holocaust within our midst in Iraq and Syria.
Mark Arabo is CEO of the Minority Humanitarian Foundation.
We're going to adopt them. We'll make sure they don't take any government assistance. We'll make sure they get a job. They become good citizens of America.
He has compiled a list of 70,000 Christians from Syria and Iraq who have sponsors that live in America, willing to help.
Our supposed government leaders are silent, are giving speeches when people are getting killed with swords, and with the absence of their leadership, we're going to do something. I'm going to do something. If Obama doesn't act, if Congress doesn't act, then I'm going to act. Try to save as many people as I can.
Arabo has started what some call a modern-day underground railroad.
We're using every means possible and every tool we have to work with other countries and other people to help them get out of the country into a safe place.
The first step is to get these people out of the clutches of ISIS and into a nearby country that will hold them, such as Jordan or Turkey. From there, the Christians hoping for asylum are flown to Mexico, a country where it's easier to maneuver, even if your papers are not in order. After that, the final barrier, getting into the promised land, America. One person we followed through the process was Fadi Ermiz. Last year, he was living in Batnaya, a northern Iraqi city with an ancient Christian tradition. Then, in September, ISIS stormed in.
Yes, a lot of them. I saw a lot of Christians get killed. I was so nervous to save my kids, my life. I left everything behind.
Fadi fled Iraq, but with little cash and no job, he didn't know what to do. Luckily, his brother-in-law, who lived in San Diego, had a connection, Mark Arabo.
My brother-in-law told me, Mark will help you, and he's still helping me.
Fadi and family flew via Europe into Mexico City, and then to Tijuana. There, he got a helping hand from a coyote, someone who smuggles people in from across the border. He only gave us his first name, Manny. He described his role in this complicated process.
I have many law enforcement friends who are willing to help along with our movement to facilitate the crossing, whether it be Border Patrol friends or law enforcement agencies, political ties, anything that's needed.
With all the danger Fadi had experienced at home, he figured there'd be trouble. But he was surprised by how smoothly the whole process went in Mexico.
I was lucky. I didn't get stopped, and they didn't check my passport.
We make sure they are escorted to a safe point on our Mexican side, and they are reached by a contact in the United States side. Once in the United States side, we will make sure that they cross to a safe destination in the United States. We will always have them in only trusted cabs and trusted drivers with our vehicles, so we will only escort them with people we will know.
Most who follow this process have to sneak across the border and manage in the U.S. as best they can, living without official sanction, the same way other undocumented aliens do. But Fadi did something bold. He and his family announced themselves to a U.S. Customs officer at the San Ysidro border crossing near San Diego, where we interviewed him.
They asked me for papers. I told them I didn't have any. They gave us food, they gave us water, and they took us to processing, where we received our release paperwork. By the border, there's a building where they take detainees and refugees.
He told them his whole story, his persecution, and how he wants asylum. He then gave them the phone number of his wife's family in San Diego, who could be his sponsor.
We stayed 24 hours, and the next day, they released us. But once I knew it was America and the Americans took me, I was so comfortable after that moment, and I was so happy. We were so happy, we cried. We cried tears of happiness.
He was given a 3-month temporary visa. But Fadi's string of good luck is an exception, and it didn't last long.
I'm not working right now because my identification expired. People are helping me. My family is helping me. Mark is trying to find me a job.
And even Fadi has now learned what is already known by many other persecuted Christians. Finding haven in America is not easy. Indeed, some of his fellow Iraqi Christians found themselves detained indefinitely at the U.S. border, which sparked this June 18th demonstration near San Diego.
The Iraqi government gave up on them, on the Christians, and also the American government can do so much, they kind of quit too. But I'm hoping for Mark Arabo to continue his support to the community and help the rest of the Christians to make it here and save their lives. It's a struggle, but it's worth it to live in this beautiful country.
Fadi's belief is echoed by others. Remember Najah Nasser and Walid Abdullah, the Christian refugees we met in Jordan? Their greatest wish was to join their daughter, Rasha, in America. She lives near an Iraqi Christian community in El Cajon, California, a place where Aramaic and Arabic are mixed with English in local cafes and churches. We found Rasha. She wouldn't speak to us on camera, but she did tell us that she's fine and working with her congressman to get her parents into the United States. And how she wishes, with the threat of ISIS looming, that the process was easier. Meanwhile, Mark Arabo continues his crusade.
We are begging Congress and begging the president to do an airlift. To do an airlift with neighboring nations, making deals with other countries and saying, let's find a temporary home. Let's find a solution for the 160,000 people in Iraq that are displaced and the ones that are being targeted in Syria. I'm not waiting.
When we return, Mark Arabo goes to Washington. As we've seen, Christians persecuted by ISIS are living as refugees in nearby states like Jordan. But many would like to settle more permanently here in the United States. The problem for them isn't just at the border in Southern California, it's in Washington, D.C., which is why Mark Arabo's in the nation's capital, knocking on doors.
And the only hope we have to save their lives is with the congressmen's.
He's met with Congress and the White House, but so far, no luck.
I pray for God to open up their hearts and their minds. And I do everything I can to make sure that they know what's going on.
He's backing a bill that aids those in the Middle East who are being singled out for their religion.
Right now, we have 33,000 visas available for the region. So what the bill does is saying, let's prioritize this to the victims of genocide.
And though Arabo is a Democrat, he's found support from Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter, a co-sponsor of the bill.
I think Mark's doing a great job. He puts pressure on everybody. He's trying to get it out there that, hey, you had an entire segment of the population, just because they believe in Jesus Christ, are being killed. Then the only place that they can go, really, Jordan can't handle them. Where are they supposed to go? There's only one place that can really absorb them. It's the United States.
But he has some interesting methods. I mean, he's got a network of people. They help Iraqi Christians make their way to Mexico, and then with the help of coyotes, they smuggle them across the border, get them into the U.S., and they declare themselves refugees and ask asylum. Is that your understanding of it?
It's interesting, but it's not a good way to do it. What Mark needs to focus on is just making the people aware of this so that our government does something and they do the right thing. Because, remember, if a Christian refugee can make it through Mexico to the southern border and then ask for asylum, then anybody else can too.
And that uncertainty is part of why it's so hard to get the bill passed.
Everybody's a little bit leery on saying, hey, come one, come all, because it's really hard to figure out who's good and who's bad. It just is. There's no electronic database. You just have to go on people's word that they're nice Christian folks.
But Arabo claims to have an answer to that fear.
We had a communication network we've developed through social media and our website, minorityhf.org. We opened up the list through our diocese and we said, who wants to reunite with their families that have been targeted from ISIS, that are displaced? let us know. We've vetted it, we cross-vetted it, we've matched them with American citizens that will sponsor them. We have their, for those who have passports, we have their passports.
Arabo says the resistance is as much political as anything.
We realized, the Republicans, immigration is a big issue. But this isn't immigration. This is family unification. These are people that just want to live, Christians that are being assaulted and killed. They're going to make the beauty of America even more attractive for the world. And that's what America is all about.
But for all the trouble he's having with Congress, he's got just as much trouble with the White House.
President Obama is a very anti-war president. He cares a lot about his anti-war legacy. But when we say let's get visas to rescue the people, to treat this like we treated Saigon, or let's treat this how we treated Bosnia, let's do the same here. Their answer is we'll get back to you.
And unlike Congress, Arabo says the president can make a difference on his own.
With the swipe of a pen, with an executive order, we could right now change the processing to match what we do in Cuba, which will immediately save 150,000 Christians that are being targeted. With the swipe of a pen, we could easily, not just do airlifts, open up processing again, give them hope, and show them how to do it.
Indeed, he took his list to the White House this April, and it wasn't the first time.
But this time, I took him 2 lists. I gave him a list of the names and a list of people that are no longer with us. And I told them, if you guys didn't have acted earlier, they wouldn't have been dead. On the list was a few thousand. And I told them that this other list you guys have, if you don't do nothing, they're gonna die. They're gonna die.
The administration can fix this on their own. We've already seen that they can interpret immigration laws in the strangest ways possible, right? They could do this on their own. But it takes the administration admitting that there's a targeted Christian population that's being killed off systematically by radical Islamists throughout the world. I don't think the administration wants to admit that. To admit that is to admit that radical Islam is, it's not a nice, peaceful religion.
Meanwhile, Representative Hunter, an Iraq war veteran who signed up after 9/11, recognizes there's also a deeper problem. While we need, he says, to help the persecuted, we also need the persecution to stop.
So what's the ultimate solution?
You kill the bad guys. You kill the bad guys. That's what you do. It's that simple.
Which brings us full circle back to King Abdullah, which is, that is his mentality, is go after the bad guys.
Because he understands it. And President Obama doesn't know what to do. He literally doesn't. I think he's scared of using his power, number one, and I don't think he knows how to use it, number two. You got to take it to him. With the one thing that King Abdullah understands, because he grew up in the area, he knows what power means in this area. And he knows the only thing that these radical Islamists will understand is power.
When we return, we head back to Jordan. Is King Abdullah's vision the one that will win out? The refugee crisis in Jordan didn't happen overnight, and it won't be solved overnight. But is there any solution within grasp? Here's reporter Benjamin Hall in Jordan, looking at the root causes of this seemingly intractable problem.
This is the town of Zarqa, birthplace of the terrorist al-Zarqawi, once head of al-Qaeda in Iraq and the most wanted man on earth. He was killed by a drone strike in 2006, but his spirit here lives on.
And this points to the real problem. The refugees, the upheaval, all the rest are just symptoms of the poisonous ideology that now terrorizes the region. It had been beaten back, only to rise again in the form of ISIS after America's precipitous withdrawal from Iraq. And today, that is felt clearly here in the streets of Zarqa.
Death to America, death to Israel, death to the infidels. These are the words that we have just heard shouted from the mosque behind us for the whole town to hear. We also know that ISIS members used to congregate at this very mosque and hand out leaflets and CDs encouraging people to go and fight.
And now, even some who preach peace wonder if force might be the only response if we are to ever solve the refugee crisis and protect the future of Christianity in the place it was born.
As a leader in the church, you support the military action against ISIS.
I, as a man of the church, I usually say that the strongest weapon is love.
Father Nabil Haddad is a Jordanian Christian leader.
But tell me if love is not going to work this way. Sometimes we have to use force, not to kill others, but to force them to come to wisdom.
As we wait for the radicals to come to wisdom, others are inclined to make the point more forcefully.
You wouldn't have religious persecution. You wouldn't have any of what's happening if you simply slammed them. We're not going to put 50,000 troops in. We're not going to drive around the road so you can IED us every day. We're going to kick your ass. And you're not going to like what the United States does to you if you persecute Christians, if you invade other nations, if you basically act like bad actors on the world stage. We're going to come after you. We're not going to build your schools. We're not going to build your mosques. And we're going to hit you really, really hard. And if you do it again, we're going to hit you again. So just be good people and don't kill and persecute tens of thousands of people in the name of radical Islam.
The man on the front lines of the crisis, King Abdullah, favors what he calls a holistic approach to the situation. He certainly believes in talking to others, at least those who might listen. But he also realizes there comes a time when actions speak louder than words. Over the decades, Jordan has carved out a unique position for itself in this region. How do you describe that?
Trying to bring some common sense to a very difficult neighborhood. Always trying to be on the side of good against evil. And unfortunately, in the past several years, this region has gone from bad to worse. And we've had to step up to the plate with our international colleagues to push back against all the challenges that we've seen.
And while he won't go into particulars, there seems to be a strategy in place for that pushback.
It's moved in leaps and bounds. Obviously, we can't get into what the next phases are about. From the ISIS perspective, all is not quiet on their western front, and that was the whole point, I think, Jordan stepping up its responsibilities when it came to ISIS.
Jordan is stepping up. Many other players in the region are taking sides as well. And while some Americans see it as a faraway problem, essentially none of our business, to other Americans, it's a crisis with fallout that has already reached our shores. A crisis with consequences that will only continue to spread until they can't be ignored. As we leave Jordan, one question remains. Is this country, with its reform-minded leader, a sign of the future? Or is it a last stand against an encroaching darkness? King Abdullah is not the only leader in the Middle East to call for moderate Islam to stand up. Egypt's President el-Sisi, United Arab Emirates leader Sheikh Mohammed have made similar calls. Only time will tell if the Muslim world is listening. That's our program tonight from Amman, Jordan. Thanks for watching.